Have you ever considered how deeply gender ideology has permeated our society, especially in Canada? In this vast land of maple syrup and ice hockey, the issue of gender ideology has seeped into the public spaces and even the education system. Canada's government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has pledged to protect LGBTQ+ rights under the banner of diversity. But let's pause for a moment and think about what diversity truly means in the context of gender. Traditionally, gender is inextricably tied to biological sex, of which there are two, male and female. This is a view that most people still hold today. Yet, a small but vocal minority is pushing for a broader interpretation of gender, one that goes beyond these two categories. This ideology, often termed gender ideology, is seen by its critics as a product of self-perception and not rooted in biology. Now, diversity is a beautiful concept when it comes to culture, race, or even thought. But when it comes to gender, it's a term that's been appropriated to include an array of self-identified genders that extend beyond the binary male or female. This perspective, however, is not universally accepted and has sparked intense debates. The controversy intensifies when we consider that this ideology is being taught to children in schools across Canada. It's one thing to respect individual choices in adulthood, but another entirely to introduce these complex concepts to young minds that are still forming their understanding of the world. Many parents, including immigrants from cultures with traditional values, are voicing their concerns about this trend. They fear that their children are being exposed to ideas that they may not be ready to comprehend, and that they, as parents, are not ready to accept. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. As we delve deeper, we see how this ideology is not only present but actively being taught to children. It's a controversy that has sparked discussions, protests, and even legal battles. But in the end, the question remains, how far should we go in the name of diversity? How would you feel if your children were taught to believe in a concept that contradicts your core values? A question that is becoming all too real for many Canadian parents as the issue of gender ideology takes center stage in the nation's education system. Imagine for a moment a classroom where children are taught that their gender isn't tied to their biological sex, but rather a fluid concept that can be changed at will. This is the reality in Canadian schools today. An ideology, contrary to the belief of many, is being presented as fact to impressionable young minds. Parents naturally are concerned. They are watching as their right to raise their children according to their own values is being overshadowed by a government-backed narrative. A narrative that many feel is a delusion based on a false self-perception. This concern is amplified among immigrant families who have brought with them a rich tapestry of traditional values. These families, seeking a better life in a democratic society, are now faced with a dilemma. How do they preserve their cultural heritage and values in a society that seems to be pushing an ideology they fundamentally disagree with? To many, this is not just about gender ideology. This is about the freedom to instill in their children the values they hold dear. It's about the right to disagree with a narrative that contradicts their understanding of human nature. It's about ensuring that their children grow up with a clear and grounded understanding of who they are. The tension is palpable, the conversations are heated, and at the heart of it all are children who are being exposed to concepts that are complex and, to many, deeply troubling. It's a situation that has sparked controversy, ignited debates, and fueled protests. Parents are standing up, raising their voices, and demanding their right to guide their children's education. However, in doing so, they risk being ostracized, labeled as bigots, and even losing their livelihoods. So, we find ourselves in a society where a democratic government seems to disregard the concerns of the majority, a society where children are being taught to question their very identity. So, not only are all Canadians expected to participate in some people's delusions, the matter is being normalized among children as well. What happens when you resist the narrative? What are the consequences? As the controversy around gender ideology continues to escalate in Canada, a growing number of citizens are choosing to resist the narrative. But resistance, as it turns out, comes with a price. Let's delve into the protests against the movement, a brave act of defiance by those who hold traditional values dear. Parents and concerned citizens have taken to the streets, voicing their discontent over the normalization of gender ideology in the education system. Their outcry is not just about preserving their values, but also about the future of their children. But these protests are not welcomed by all. Those who dare to oppose the narrative risk being branded as bigots. This label, as harsh as it may sound, carries serious implications. It's not just a social stigma, it's a potential career killer. In a society that prides itself on inclusivity and diversity, being labeled a bigot can result in job insecurity. Employers wary of controversy and backlash may hesitate to hire those who've been branded thus. This in turn creates a climate of fear and self-censorship. But isn't this a democratic society? Shouldn't a democracy encourage a diversity of thought, a marketplace of ideas where everyone's voice is heard? Ironically, the very concept of diversity that the government champions seems to exclude diverse opinions on gender. The narrative appears to be unidirectional, with dissenting voices silenced or marginalized. This raises serious concerns about the state of free speech in Canada. If opposing views are suppressed, if people are afraid to express their beliefs for fear of reprisal, can we still call it a democracy? Isn't it the essence of democracy to allow for debate, discussion, and disagreement? So, we circle back to our initial question: what happens when you resist the narrative? What are the consequences? The answer, it seems, is a bitter pill to swallow. For those who dare to resist, the road ahead is fraught with challenges and uncertainties. But perhaps the greatest question of all is this: in a democratic society, should opposing views be silenced? For those considering Canada as their new home, it's crucial to understand the societal values they are expected to integrate into. The issue of gender ideology is not a minor one. It's a pervasive topic that permeates public spaces and educational institutions. The Canadian government, under the banner of diversity, has vowed to offer protections for those who identify outside the traditional binary of male and female. This is a reality that prospective immigrants must come to terms with. Moreover, it's not just about personal acceptance but also about preparing for the impact on your children. Schools in Canada are teaching this ideology, normalizing it among the younger generations. This may be a far cry from the traditional values you wish to instill in your kids. Before making the decision to immigrate, it's crucial to be informed about the values and ideologies that the Canadian society holds. Remember, knowledge is power. If you'd like to continue understanding Canadian society before deciding whether to immigrate, consider following us. We will be releasing more videos to help you decide. You might know others who currently find themselves in the dilemma of whether to immigrate to Canada or not. Please consider sharing these videos with them as well.